How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the All You Can Board podcast. My name is Dylan.
And I'm Carlo.
And today's main course is the year ahead in board games, which is, of course, 2026. We're in March right now as of recording, but we've got 9 more months of the year. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of different things. Our anticipated game each. We're going to be talking about some trends we want to see start and end in the upcoming year. Some games we want to commit to playing more of in our collection, as well as a bold prediction that we're each going to make for in the board gaming space for the year ahead. So, but before we jump into that main course, as always here, we're going to start with some appetizers. And Carlo, why don't we start with your appetizer?
All right, so I'm going to talk about something today that might eventually lead to its own episode topic, and that is the ebbs and flows of our gaming tastes. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately, thinking about how our tastes change over time, how we evaluate not only like our absolute favorite games, you know, the games we consider a 10 out of 10 and that sort of thing, but also just like what we're looking to play when game night rolls around or an exciting gaming weekend or whatever the case may be. And I've mentioned before that, you know, when I first got into the hobby and I was like getting into games like Agricola and Race for the Galaxy, I was enjoying a lot more of these like very strategic games that maybe weren't as social. There wasn't like a whole lot of, it's not like people were negotiating around the table or trash talking a lot, but a lot of more like quiet heads down play. And that over the past few years, I found myself gravitating more towards more social games. So even though games like, again, the two I mentioned, Agricola and Race for the Galaxy are still so, you know, I love those games and have played them so many times, I found myself just, going more towards these like more social games. And I've started wondering, is this just like who I am now as a gamer? Is this just, I'm going to continue on this kind of trend, on this path of wanting these more social games, and eventually I'll just like be less interested in these types of strategic games? And so I noticed we had, you know, the weekend at Game Atoba, we got to play a bunch of those kind of more social, higher player count games. And then this past weekend, you know, obviously Raj had us over. We had a bit of a gaming weekend there. And I couldn't help but shake this feeling. Like I showed up and I saw you guys playing Keyflower. Obviously I showed up late. And I was kind of like, oh, I wish I'd been able to get in on that game of Keyflower. And that night I ended up playing 3 great games. I played Rumble Nation for the first time, which was really fun. Like a 45-minute area control game with just some basic dice rolling. For those who don't know, we'll talk about it more some other day. And we played Hot Streak with, 9 players, I think. It was hilarious, lots of fun, but like very much a party game. And then we played Zuvadis, which is one of my favorite negotiation games, and like honestly the last time we did our top 50 games of all time, I think it was in my top 20 somewhere. Like I love Zuvadis. We played that with 7 players, and that was the end of the night. So I remember, even though I had a lot of fun, I remember thinking like, oh, it's too bad I didn't quite get to play like a main event level game. And then the next day I actually went back to Raj's place, and the 4 of us played Fast Slots and Modern Art. And so 3 of the players had never played Fast Slots before, so I taught 3 of them, and 2 of them had never played Modern Art. And like both games were amazing, like awesome experiences as always. But I also, again, at the end of the weekend, I remember thinking like, okay, so I played Rumble Nation, Hot Streak, Zuvadis, Fast Slots, and Modern Art. Like the longest game I played is about an hour-long game that isn't necessarily like a heavy strategy game or anything like that. And so I'm sort of wondering, like I'm sort of finding myself the past couple days almost craving like a bigger Uwe Rosenberg game, or trying an unplayed game from my shelf like Dominant Species or Barrage. Like I'm sort of craving a bit more of these like heavier, more strategic games suddenly. And now I'm asking myself, like, is this me swinging back in the other direction suddenly, or just like equalizing a bit to offset how much more I was slanting towards that? And I don't really have an answer for myself, but it's made me now want to ask you, because we haven't really talked about this a lot between the two of us. Like, but have you thought about your gaming tastes lately in this way? Have they changed in the past, like whether that's the past couple months or the past year? And do you expect them to continue to change? Like, what do you see as far as your trajectory goes for your tastes in gaming?
Yeah, there's definitely been, actually, hang on, before I answer your question there, I just want to ask you one question, because otherwise I'll completely forget, because it's based off what you just said. Like, so you're saying that you were like you thought before that you would sort of like that the games that you played that would have been a feeling of like, oh, that was a really accomplished, like I feel great about the games I played, not disappointed that I didn't play something else like Modern Art, a Fast Loss, all this stuff, but you left and you were kind of surprised that you were like, oh, I was craving a bigger game because you thought you wouldn't be craving, or like did it catch you off guard is I guess what I'm asking.
So I think what it comes down to is anytime I've been like packing up games to take places, or I think about these gaming weekends, Gametoba or Raj hosting us at his place, or other times we've had sort of bigger gaming sessions lately, a lot of the time I've been one of the people advocating for playing multiple smaller games. I've talked about this a lot, and while I've enjoyed doing that a lot, and you know, if you would have asked me a couple months ago, like, do I have any regrets about doing that? I would say absolutely not. And I even now, I wouldn't say I regret it, but I'm almost starting to feel this feeling like, have I been leaning into that too much? And as a result, too much time has gone by where I'm realizing like I'm ignoring those slightly more strategic, meatier games a little more than I should. Maybe I have to be a bit more intentional about making those a priority so that they actually get played.
Do you, and you don't have to go into too deep into this answer because I think this is going to end up coming up in a different video that we're going to be doing, but do you think that that any part of the way you're feeling is due to our game of Brass Birmingham? And what I mean by that is like that is a very strategic game. That is a very like well-regarded game. It is not like a quick little fast slots type thing or whatever. And I shouldn't say little fast slots, like it's not a filler game, but like, you know what I mean? And so do you think that having played that in the way that that left you feeling contributed to this at all?
It might. I mean, the exciting thing about that game was just that it's like of all the games I've tried for the first time in the past few years, like it's one of the best like heavier ones for sure. So maybe that was part of like maybe getting excited about like a new strategy game to us was part of it, but I don't know. It's not like I felt like the shift happened right when we played Brass a couple weeks ago, but who knows? Maybe that subconsciously has factored in, and maybe the fact that I heard that you guys played half a game of Brass earlier in the day this past weekend, and that I missed out on that, like maybe that factored in. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and so to come back to your original question, like I would say that my tastes are always shifting in the last couple years, I would say, especially since we started back up on the channel and I'm just playing more games in general. But I don't know that the biggest like shift that I can point to that I would say maybe I haven't communicated as much to you guys yet is that I'm realizing that games in the party genre, especially like games like Hot Streak that we played a few times recently and things like that, like I'm gravitating less to, and or in the sense that I am gravitating to using those games specifically in settings where there are people that do not want to play heavier games or don't like playing heavier games. So, you know, if I'm having a birthday party and there's a whole wide range of my friends there, I'm not going to try to play a game that I know like 6 of them don't want to play. So it's an easy go-to to play one of the party games that I enjoy. But whenever we have people in our group that are into playing like medium games, heavy games, I never am going to be the one advocating for party games because I would just always rather play something else than a party game. And even Hot Streak, I enjoy Hot Streak, but even just having played Hot Streak like the 4 or 5 times now that I have, I think it's 4, I almost am like cooling on it already. Like I enjoy it. I think it's a ride every time I play, but it's just not exactly like there's a ceiling for party games that I hit really quickly if I'm playing them too much, or if they're coming up in situations where we could have played something else. Like we did that vote, and to be clear, I had a really good time playing Hot Streak. Like I'm not upset or disappointed, but we did a vote ahead of time of do we want to split into a 4 and a 5 player group, or do we want to play like a 9 player game or a full game or whatever. Maybe that was when we did Zuvadis, but regardless, it was like I was the only one who voted for splitting up, and that was just because even though Zuvadis is the best of the options there, and that's the one we ended up playing, I am just like we're around the table with a bunch of people who appreciate and enjoy heavier games. So I was in my head, I'm like, this is the opportunity. Like I am always going to advocate for playing those. And if we had one for 7 players, I would have, but we didn't, right? So that's kind of where I realized that. Like I think I've shifted away from lighter and party games if I'm in a group with people who will play heavier games, because at that point I'm just like, let's play something meatier because I just appreciate those a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And yeah, that was a funny moment when you were the only person who
The
who
only
voted
one.
to split up. I think someone made a comment about like, "Oh, Dylan hates us all. Just wants to play a smaller group."
Yeah, it's more just that I am, and for me, the reason I asked the Brass Birmingham question is because I did feel that after Brass, it sort of reinvigorated not that it was ever gone, but it just reminded me how exciting finding a really good, meaty, like, 3 to 4 weight game on BGA is, and or how enjoyable it is to play ones that you've already played but haven't explored enough, and so that just kind of reminded me the joy of them. So.
Well, and I know you've been getting like obviously a lot more into solo games the past few months, but as a result, like playing more heavy games because you're playing a lot of these heavy games solo. Do you feel like you're gonna keep like leaning even further into that? Like you're gonna play even more like solo heavy games, or are you starting to feel like you're hitting a wall with that and maybe?
I don't think I'm not hitting a wall. I don't think I'm going to, because I'm playing a lot, but I'm not. It's not like I'm starting a day and sort of either forcing myself or just being intentional about, I'm going to spend this whole day playing heavy games. I'm playing a bunch of Cozy Stickerville. I'm playing a bunch of other like medium solo games as well. And so I think I'm just committing to sort of creating space to always be having a heavy game on the go. And I feel like this is also going to make it a lot easier for me to teach some of these heavy games. Like SETI's one that I've played a bunch of times solo, still have not played it multiplayer. And it's absolutely one, spoiler alert for when I talk about it, like it's going to be better with other people. And I am now going to be able to be more confident in how I teach that, and even like directing people to like, hey, you're going to want to kind of focus, like don't ignore this or whatever. It's the same way that when I played Brass, the last weekend or whatever, that I was able to say like, don't be scared of loans. Like loans are good, because like I had that knowledge having played, right? So I feel like it's going to make me a better teacher on some of these heavy games, and it's already a challenge to commit to teaching heavy games to like 3 other people around the table who haven't played. So it's helping in that regard for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. So staying on the topic of our that game night we just had, or the game day we just had at Raj's there, we played Zuvadas, and it's been a while since I played Zuvadas, and it's also been a while since I played a negotiation game of that level, where it's that heavy into negotiation. And it just left me with a question that I wanted to ask you, and that is, we had some, and this is like, the game went super well. This is not spurred by anything that happened in the game. This is actually something I just thought was a curious question to ask about negotiation games. And that is, we had someone playing with us that I was meeting for the first time. It was one of Raj's friends. I'm not sure if you had met him before, and he was meeting a bunch of us for the first time. And my question to you is, do you think it is a detriment? Do you think if a person is new to a group and they are meeting a bunch of people, or all of them or most people for the first time, do you think it is a detriment to their ability to do well in that negotiation game, or do you think it actually makes it puts them in a position to do better because people don't know their personality?
Ooh.
And I asked that because, like for me, as someone with like, sometimes I have anxiety meeting new people, and I do have social anxiety. Me going into a setting where, say, I was the one person who didn't meet everyone, and I was playing a 7-player game of Zuvadas, I know I would probably do worse in the negotiation. But people would not know how to read me, and they wouldn't know my personality. They wouldn't know how I lie. They wouldn't know how I make deals and stuff. And so I just left kind of wondering, because at first I was like, when we picked Zuvadas, I was like, well, I wonder if this is going to be sort of like a hard entrance for someone who doesn't know a bunch of us. And then I was like, but actually, maybe that's going to put him at a much bigger advantage, because we don't know what to expect. And I was a question I don't have an answer to, so I figured I'd pose it to you.
Okay, so yeah, I did know Nikolai. I actually played soccer with him this past outdoor season. So,
okay.
But I think Raj and I were the only 2 people there who knew him from before. And before the game of Zuvadas, he was there for at least a few hours playing other games, so he had gotten a chance to meet a few of you. But it's an interesting question, because I think I hate to say it depends is always like, pick a side kind of thing. But I think it really does depend on the level of negotiation or the type of game, because like in general, if someone is newer, you're less likely to you're going to take it easier on them, in the sense that you might not like pick on them. You might be less likely to like go back on a deal,
right?
Or screw them over, stab them in the back, if you don't know them as well. It might also be harder to figure out, like to get to those creative, interesting deals, because you don't know if I don't know this person super well. Am I going to be sit here for a couple minutes and try to negotiate back and forth, like a deal with them? And then if the deal doesn't go well, how do I feel about just being like, okay, never mind, I'll just like negotiate with someone else? Like, you almost want to just make like more friendly, agreeable deals. Like, I found that tends to be what happens when there's newer players.
Yeah.
Is a lot of the time in something like Zuvadis, it's like, hey, so-and-so, how about like, I'll give you a vote for now and like you can give me a vote later kind of thing. It's like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Kind of like, it ends up making the negotiations maybe a little less interesting.
Yeah.
But I will say the other thing is with Zuvadis, because it's a game with like the actual the animal powers, it is a game where having played it before helps a lot. So especially the fact that you're trading away the use of your powers. So like, I could tell there were times where someone would be like, hey, Nikolai, I'll give you this, like, if I give you this power, or like, can you let me use your power? And he'd be like, hang on a second, and like trying to figure out what was going on again. What power is what? Yeah. So it's a bit of a weird space.
I just like, I guess the question I would also leave the people listening, if you have thoughts on this or want to put in our comments and stuff, is, if someone is new to a group playing a negotiation game, is the person who's new at an advantage? Are the other people at an advantage? Or is it a wash and really there's benefits to both and it'll kind of even out? Because like, we talk about a game like, say, Root, and if you're new to Root and you're coming into a game with 3 people who've already played, 100% you're at a disadvantage. And I know that can be said for a lot of board games, but this is like an extreme where not understanding like certain... Anyways, I won't get into the details, but I just feel like that is one where you would absolutely be at a bigger disadvantage and have to crawl back. And with negotiation, you're right. It comes down to the person, it comes down to the group, it comes down to a bunch of things. But if there is a penchant for people to say, well, I'm going to go a little bit easier, I'm not going to go back on this deal, versus like, if I would go back on a deal with you because we know each other and we feel more comfortable doing that, does that, put them at an advantage because people are going to go a little easier on them even if they don't intend to? I don't know. It was just an interesting thing that I thought could color some conversations we have and reviews we have about negotiation games in the future, to kind of say and make us think, we like this game because we're playing with a bunch of the same people and friends we have rapport with. But if all of a sudden, I invite my friend Corbin over and he's like, hey, can I bring my friend or my roommate, and I've never met them before, am I going to gravitate away from suggesting a certain negotiation game because of the position it's putting them in, or because of how I feel it's going to make it easier or harder or whatever? I don't know. Just thought it was an interesting thing I started to sort of ponder afterwards.
It is interesting, and it's maybe something we do. We always try to say that we try not to take our like gaming group for granted and stuff, but like maybe we do to an extent as far as this goes, because negotiation games are maybe among the most like volatile type of game in terms of like they could go very poorly in the wrong setting. And they could also go extremely well. And the fact that, like you said, we're not showing up at game stores playing games with people we've never met before. That's how a lot of people play games. They go to their local game store and they play with people they might not know super well. And we are fortunate to play mostly with close friends where negotiating feels... like you can just be comfortable, be yourself. You can, there's a lot of trash talking and stuff. But I think even if we look at so you guys also played Bonanza earlier in the day before I got there, right? So something like that, I think it would be a pretty much equal playing field. Like having someone new. I mean, there's certain things that you might understand better playing it more, like the value of the beans, like what, but other than that, it's a fairly straightforward game. Zuvadis is a step up for sure. I think if we were talking like Sidereal Confluence, or we're talking like I talked about John Company on the channel a while ago, like someone new in that would have like be at a massive disadvantage because you just don't really understand your negotiating power.
Similar with like hidden role games would have the same, I've played One Night Ultimate Werewolf before with people that I never met, or where I was the one person people didn't really know, and it's not that it always puts you at a disadvantage, but it does make me feel at times, if I am ruthless or if I screw someone over, are they going to think that's my actual personality, and like they're going to be like, why are we going to invite this guy back, or have a certain impression of me, versus understanding that's just how I am in this game, or I'm sneaky in this game, but in real life I'm like timid or whatever. Like people don't have that perspective of me, right? And so they're learning about me through a negotiation game where I might blackmail them on someone else's turn, like it can be a tough setting. And so it's an interesting thing we should probably consider for like these type of genre of games when we talk about them, for like how we're communicating to our audience. Like, we love this game, but it depends are you have the same group that you're playing with? Are you just going to a random game nights where you're playing with strangers? That all matters.
And maybe that should be part of the stress test for us, almost like when we're going to review a negotiation game, is like after we've played it a few times, try to play it once with someone who's playing it for the first time and see how beginner friendly it is, or what it does to the dynamic of the game with one unfamiliar player.
Yeah, truly. Cool. These are both really good appetizers. Honestly, I think both could end up have spun into full-on discussions, which is great. That's the kind of appetizer you want. But we do have a great main course, and so we are going to jump into that. But before we do, we're just going to take a quick little break for our sponsor.
All You Can Board is proudly sponsored by Victory Pints, our local game store of choice here in Winnipeg, Canada. We strongly believe that Victory Pints is the gold standard of board game stores, not just here in Winnipeg. Their main priority is having a wide selection of games, many of which you won't find elsewhere. They ship Canada-wide, $15 flat rate, or free shipping for orders over $200, and even take requests to try and order in specific games. They also have a used game section where you can trade in games for store credit, and maybe even find some hidden gems that others have traded in. Note that the used game section is only available for in-person purchases and trades. Again, located in Winnipeg at the corner of Henderson and Hespeler, check them out at victorypints.ca. A massive thank you to Victory Pints for all their support over the years.
All right, welcome back, and it is time for our main course, which is the year ahead in board games. And so this is sort of our, in lieu of doing a most anticipated games this year, or something where we talk about 2026 ahead. We've done those the last number of years, or most of the years that we've had a channel, and many channels do it, where it's sort of like the anticipated games that you're looking forward to in the year. And what we've always found is, while we always have games we can pick when we do this in January, by the time June rolls around, our list would be drastically different because so many of the games that we end up looking forward to weren't even announced, or it's just it's an ever evolving thing, and it's sort of something we were doing just because everyone was doing it. And so we still want to talk about it, but we just figured this would be a better place to do it. And now we can talk about a whole bunch of different topics to do with 2026 and the year ahead. But we are going to start with the most anticipated game of 2026. And so this is right now. This is, by the time you listen to this, there could have been a game announcement that changes what we would have picked. But I'm going to kick things off, and I'm going to pick a game that I have mentioned once on a video on our channel. But after I broke down all my options, it's still the one that I'm most personally excited for, and that is called Greyloon. And so Greyloon is from William Attia, who is the designer of Caylus, which even though I didn't like Caylus, or didn't like it as much as you did, Carlo, it's one of those games where you can play and you can recognize the brilliance of the design, and it's obviously well regarded for a reason. And so that alone, when people say this is a new expert game coming from the designer of Caylus, it catches my attention. But on top of that, it's worker placement, but worker placement sort of in the style of Zolkin is I think what it sounds closer to, where when you place is not necessarily when you're taking certain actions, or at least all the actions, it's when you pull that worker back that you're claiming the resources or recruiting companions or acquiring items or whatever it is. But on top of that, this is very adventure and sort of it's not a campaign game, but it sort of would make you think it is, with some of the description and the fact that they've tied adventure and quests so much into it. So all of that made me excited. And then on top of that, I think I missed it the first time, but there's also an auction element. And the auction element in this is called Dutch Priority, which I didn't know what it was at first, so I had to look into it. But it's a multiple lot auction in which prices for the lots are determined based on the number of bids placed on the lots up for bid. And so auction games in general, obviously right away I'm usually intrigued, but combine this all together and I just feel like there's going to be something I like about this game. I'd be surprised if this comes out and I'm just this is a complete dud or complete miss. And so out of everything I've been looking into, it's the one that I feel most sort of excited about, and I really just gauge this on my excitement, and I don't know when it's coming out. It's I should also mention it is re-implementing a game called Spyrium, but with a very different theme, and I don't know a lot about that one, but when I looked into it, it has the same auction Dutch Priority thing in there, but because I missed that one, I'm excited for this one. I feel like I'll like some element of it, and maybe this will make up for the fact that I'm not a Caylus lover. So
Nice pick. Honestly, if I wasn't stubbornly avoiding, like half of the games I was considering for this were like re-implementations of previous games, and I was stubbornly tried to avoid them. But Grey Loon would have been my pick otherwise too.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just based on like Kalis and Kalis 1303 are the only William Mattia games I've played, but I love them both, and just off of that alone, and I've heard good things about Spyrium or however you say it.
Yeah.
So.
And I will say, like, one of, you know what, I will say the staff. I was going to say a couple of the other ones that I was close on, but I'll let you do yours first in case I name one of yours.
I just want to say I'm really glad you didn't say, I just thought you were going to say the Queen's Dilemma again.
Oh, yeah.
Which this would be like the third or fourth year in a row. I know we don't do this every year,
up.
but yeah, I was going to say at this point, I hope you've given up hope on that. No.
Yeah.
I hope for your sake that does eventually get
It's apparently delivering like in the next 6 months, but you know what? I'm not even going to, I shouldn't even said that out loud. This is not going to happen.
Okay, so mine is going to be Gods and Mortals. So this is the upcoming game from publisher Wolf Designer, who is probably best known for the Guards of Atlantis games, most recently Guards of Atlantis 2. They've also done Trick Shot, and I'm drawing a blank on the other big one. I think it's called like Warp Speed or something like that. Anyway, so it's a stock trading and area control game with some hand management that basically there's not a ton of info out there right now. I think it's either just on crowdfunding now or just about to go to crowdfunding. And I believe seems like we've probably secured a review copy for this when it gets actually fulfilled later, and it is slated for 2026. So I'm getting the impression it's basically think of like a more complex Botswana is the idea I'm kind of getting here, because you have this like this map with like area control battles happening, but the way that you influence the strength of the different the different gods on the map has to do with like the cards from your hand. So it's like a hand management game that you use to influence what's going on the map to win these area control battles, and the gods have different powers and stuff like that. So, but it sounds like it lighter on rules even than games like Trick Shot and Guards of Atlantis 2. And so the reason why this is my most anticipated is just off the strength of those two games. Like Trick Shot is really well done. Guards of Atlantis 2, like those are both games that I own that I have not had a chance to play anywhere near as much as I would like. They put a lot of time and care into their games. Clearly, like when they work on games, this company, they tend to just sort of, it's like all hands on deck with their company on this one game. They release maybe one game per year or one every couple of years on average. So they're not one of those companies that's just kind of like pumping out mass amounts of games. And so, yeah, I'm just really interested to see what they do with this.
Yeah, I just pulled up, there's like one image of the game and shows the board and a bunch of the, looks like asymmetrical like factions and stuff. Looks really cool. Even though I know it's a very different game, I'm getting like Zuvadis vibes just because I recently played it because of all the asymmetry powers and the like the long board and stuff. I know it's a very different game, but even
I thought you were going to say Santorini for some reason.
Oh, Santorini. I mean, yeah, that too, like the way it pops and the style of it. But even just like reading some of the little abilities on some of the cards and how you're going to like influence the different areas like Athens and Troy and everything on the map there looks really cool. And the little meeple-esque pieces, super nice, well designed. I know it's probably in a prototype stage, but like, yeah, and also Guards of Atlantis 2 is one I haven't played, but I've wanted to try for a while. And I've heard enough about that. I know there's going to be something there that I really appreciate, even if it is just that a point of like, you know, how we think about Oath, where we might not want to go back to it, but we we still think that's one of the most interesting games we've played. Lots to love there. I feel like at the very least, I'll feel that way about Guards of Atlantis 2. And so this looks like more accessible to get to the table regularly. And that is exciting to me. And yeah, it looks awesome.
And that's the thing is like Trick Shot is 2-player only, or I think there's maybe a mode to do 2 versus 2. So it's kind of like a niche, and it's hockey, right? So it's like a very niche game. Guards of Atlantis 2, it's team versus team. So you have to have an even number of players, and it's ideal with either 4 or 6. But it's like that one's been hard to get back to the table too, because of you want people who are ideally like somewhat familiar with the game. So their games are like really well done, but almost like very niche and tough to get to the table. And this one seems like it'll be easier to find more opportunities to play it. So yeah, that's Gods and Mortals from Wolf Designer.
Great pick. I really like that pick. Okay, so moving on from anticipated games, now we're moving into some trends. So we're going to start with a trend we want to see start in 2026, and then after we've both done that, we're going to do a trend we want to see end. And I will say that, like, if either if I say something that it was also yours, Carlo, or vice versa, I think we just jump in and say that was also mine, then we can discuss it together. We don't have to like try to come up with another one or anything, just because I think this is one where we might have certain similar thoughts on stuff, where we might have similar topics, and I think that's interesting in and of itself too. So here, I'll start with the trend we want to see start, and then when we get to the trend we want to see end, maybe you'll start that one, and we'll flip it around. So trend I want to see start. Carlo, I want to see better board game boards. And specifically, this is because I've played Cozy Stickerville, and there's just one small, simple little thing that they're not the first game to do it, but in my head, I would love this to be the standard for every single board game with a board going forward. And that is just where the fold is on the board, there's like this recess that makes it never sort of bend upwards or whatever. It always lays flat, and it's like in the crease between the sections of the board, like, you know, where like a board would open, where that crease is, there's this little, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but like it's not, they're not butted right up against each other. Like I'm showing Carlo this little example with my hands. Like, instead of them being butted up against each other, there's this little gap that makes it so that the board always folds down, and it doesn't have that problem where like there's a warp or whatever. And I've seen games do this. It must be slightly more expensive material or whatever to do. But Cozy Stickerville is like a $30 to $40 game, or maybe it's 45 or something. And so it can't be increasing the cost that much. And it honestly makes such a difference for me because of how many games I have in my collection. Maybe it's our climate, maybe it's what everyone's doing, but the amount of times I have a game that I take the board out and I have to like bend it down, or I have to put it out something heavy on it to try to get to the board to stay flat. And there is this solution that exists. I've seen it fix this problem. You just have to use a different board material, a different type of board. And if it was up to me, this would be the standard. It would just be if you're gonna have a board, you use this type of board instead, with these sort of like slightly bigger creases, so we never have to deal with this problem, because it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I absolutely hate when I take out a board game, especially with people who like haven't played it before, and like they have to see me like forcing this board. I'm folding it in the opposite direction, almost like feeling like I'm gonna break it, just to try to get the board to stay flat, because otherwise the little cardboard pieces are sliding on the angles of the board and stuff. And it just, like, this might just be a me thing, but I've heard from enough people that they don't like the warping of their boards. And if this solves it, like, let's just commit as an industry, this is the way we do boards going forward.
No, that's a good point. I know how much the like warped boards and stuff bothers you. Like, for me, it's almost like it is sort of like nails on a chalkboard kind of feeling, but it's almost like I've just accepted it as like a necessary evil of the gaming industry. But I don't know if I've seen one of these boards that you're talking about, like this Cozy Stickerville one.
I might just be doing a bad job describing it, because I think we've played games that have, but maybe we just didn't call it out. But yeah, it's just like, instead of like where you fold, instead of it's like being two sides of the board that are right up against each other, there's just like a little bit of material they've added, or that exists between where like the actual thick cardboard is, so that they don't like compete for space. It just gives it like a little bit of a gap, and then it is able to sort of fall down normally on the table. And I don't know, the amount of times I've set up games and just like gritted my teeth at my warped boards, I think it's time for this trend to start.
Yeah, and of all forms of like entertainment, like arts entertainment, like video games, movies, all kinds of stuff, like this is something pretty unique to board games, right? It's like, yeah, the actual thing that we are using to interact with doesn't work as intent, like it doesn't stay flat, and in order to play this game properly, we need this board to be flat, and it is an annoying thing to feel like it's not like the company did something wrong necessarily, even if they can, potentially fabricate the board in a different way, but it's just this frustrating thing that is preventing you from enjoying the product in the way it was intended to.
It's like it's in the name of our hobby, board game, and the board itself is not good enough quality to stay flat. And to me, it's just, board games, it's always a cost thing with these kind of questions. But I just feel like we've talked about with card games, or if you're going to do a card game, invest in really good quality cards. If you're going to have a board for a board game, it should not be the thing that makes people go like, oh, this isn't great.
Let me ask you, how would you feel about instead just having the boards already be, instead of having to have a board like flattened out, what if the box shape was just accommodating the natural shape of the board, so that the board would never have to be folded?
I mean, yeah, like
It'd be super weird shaped boxes, but I'm saying like, how would you feel about having a bunch of boxes on your shelf that are flatter but longer?
Ooh, I mean, it would depend. Like, are they all different shapes too? Like, does my shelf just look like a weird, like, well, no, that's
the box
not
is made to fit the board.
No, because there's already a way to make your boards foldable and not bend. I've seen it. So just start using this, or if you know what, if someone in the industry is listening to this and can explain to me like the exact cost differences, like is there some like maybe I don't understand, but all I know is that Cozy Stickerville has a board. It's not a gigantic one, but that is an affordable game and it doesn't bend on me. So like let's just go that direction.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was just giving you a hard time about obviously the flattened boards, but I think it'd be pretty comical to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so the trend I'd like to see start is actually also component related, which I didn't expect yours to be. And so my trend that I would like to see start is, so Dylan, do you remember when we played Rival Cities?
Yes.
Do you remember the component boxes that come in the box?
Oh, off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay, so I'm gonna describe them. So basically, what my suggestion is, instead of having plastic bags, like swap out plastic bags in whether it's every single game going forward or like as many games as possible for these component boxes instead. So Rival Cities has these things. They're basically like those old match boxes where you have like the case that has the other part inside that you can slide out. It's just like a rectangular, like almost bowl. Like think of a little like boat that you slide out and then you pull out the matches and you slide it back in. It was basically just the Rival Cities comes with 4 of those. And so there's not a single plastic bag in the box. And the box didn't have to be any bigger because it's not like they're making these specialty boxes to accommodate components and there's a bunch of empty space. Like it's a regular 2-player game box. Like the size of Rival Cities is the same, I'm pretty sure, as like Patchwork or Great Plains or the standard kind of 2-player game box. But instead of having a bunch of plastic in there, you have the component boxes, not only to save on plastic, so it's like better for the environment, but also they double as little component holders during the game. Like we literally used those component boxes as, and they have some nice art on them too. So yeah, it's just kind of like a dual purpose thing where like, reduce plastic while also having a nice little component holder built right into the game. And then it eliminates the need for an insert as well, because everything is nicely contained inside the box.
I was just about to say this might be the middle ground we've finally been waiting for, where you with like wanting a box full of bags of tokens and me wanting the insert. Like we just have to meet in the middle with this new type of component holder. I could get on board with this because like it's more organized when you open the box. It doesn't look like this big huge mess. But the component holders and different inserts, usually everything gets tossed around anyway. So this is like it fixes that issue, right?
That's exactly it. Nothing's flying all over the place, but you still have the organization level of bags without, unnecessary plastic.
Yeah, and I not to keep coming back to the same game, but Cozy Stickerville uses this thing for when you pack up and save the game, where it's like a little cardboard box that you just like open one side of it, and you put your tokens and your cards that you currently have in your display, and you close the flap, and then even something like that, it's a little bit different, not quite as nice as Rival Cities, but it would also still work and solve the issue of not having to use plastic bags that way. And I can't imagine the cost is very much more, even if you have to like have the players sort of like do the folding and build that box themselves. Like I did that in Cozy Stickerville. It took me like 10 seconds, 20 seconds to do it, and I don't have to have plastic bags for that. So yeah, I can get on board with this.
And I think we're seeing more even in like bigger games. We're seeing the personalized component trays, like in Rise and Fall. Yeah. That I got, where you can store all your little pieces, or even in Civolution, you have your little personal component thing where all your stuff fits into. I'd just like to see that become more of a standard. Yeah,
Civolution's a good call because they do can't remember now if there's any bags in there, but absolutely, like the cards, each of the players' components, like all of them have their own little boxes, lids, and everything.
Yeah,
that you take
I think
off.
there were still some bags, but it cut down significantly on how many because a ton of stuff can just be thrown all loose in that player component box, and it doesn't really matter if it's all rattling around because like each player needs that at the start of the game anyway.
This is a much better solution that I can get on board with than replacing plastic bags with paper bags. And only because paper bags, I just find that they always get damaged, creased, folded, ripped, and everything. And whereas this, I just feel like it would last longer than a paper bag would.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Nice. Those are good ones. We're just all about components for trends in 2026. Okay, so why don't you start this one? What is a trend that you want to see stop in 2026?
Okay. So I'm going to start off real general here, and then you're probably going to give me a side glance, and then I'm going to have to get more specific. So the trend I'd like to see stop is laziness and cutting corners.
Okay.
But more specifically, I want to see this trend stop of excessive reliance on reimplementations and IPs. So basically just like be more inventive as an industry. I have a certain degree of like acceptance for the amount of like Lord of the Rings games that continue to come out, and Star Wars and Dune and all this kind of stuff. Like some of them I like a lot, right? Like we've talked about like Duel for Middle Earth. Like even the Lord of the Rings trick taking games are great. Like Star Wars deck building game was perfectly fine. Like the 2-player game, Star Wars Unlimited has been fun when I've played that. Like Dune Imperium's great. Like a lot of these games are great. It's not, and like even Marvel Champions, even though I'm not big into the Marvel theme, like I appreciated that game, but I just feel like the more, trends do set precedence, right? And the more companies start to look around and see other companies like, okay, well, this company is they released 4 games this year. Their most successful one was the Retheme. Okay, well, maybe we should start doing that more. Oh, this other company, they're doing a really good job of reimplementations. Maybe we should start leaning into those more. And it just like starts becoming a trend to the point where it feels like it's almost predominantly, like, again, when I was looking at all these games I know that were being released in 2026, and I was going to the Board Game Geek pages, like almost every single one had previously was or whatever, and had like the previous title. I'm like, oh right, this is also a reimplementation of an older game. And when they're done well, like we talked about Zoo Vadis earlier, that's one that, even though we haven't played Quo Vadis, everyone who has played both seems to say that that's like extremely well done in terms of modernizing a game, preserving what made it great, but also improving it and making it feel more modern and that kind of thing. But I just feel like there's a bit too much of it, more than I'd like to see. We see it in every industry. We've talked about this before with movies and video games too, with remastered editions all the time. And yeah, I don't know. When I think most of my favorite releases of the past few years, even though, yeah, there's the odd reprint here and there and re-implementation, a lot of the ones that really stand out to me are the ones that are doing something novel. And that's kind of what I'm most excited about every year, is like which games are going to do something new to stand out.
Yeah, this is a really good one, because this is not like, this is the way you like this specific thing is very specific to board games, in the sense that like you're not going to see a James Bond movie come out that's been rethemed as Lord of the Rings, right? You know what I mean? Like, but every medium, movies, books, maybe books less, there's this play it safe mentality of, well, we could start a new IP, we could do a brand new video game, or we could just do Grand Theft Auto 6. You know what I mean? Because we know it's going to work. And look, while I'm not saying I'm against like continuing different series, or that like I don't want to see certain, sequels to certain games or movies, whatever, it does get tiring when it seems like the prevailing sentiment is play it safe. And when we know that the reason we're playing it safe is just because to make more money. Right? Like, I understand these products need to make money to be viable, but I also understand that Catan wouldn't exist if someone was just playing it safe and being like, let's reskin Monopoly, right? Like you have to at some point say, I want to make the next great board game, or else you're saying, I just want to make a board game that sells well. And I don't want to say that in a way that's like, it's bad that you want your board game to sell well. Obviously it's not. It's great, good for all of us when we have big like games like Wingspan come out and things like that. But does the industry need 6 more Wingspans, or does the industry need 6 new IPs that will turn into Wingspans, right? And I think that at the end of the day, there is always going to be this prevailing sentiment of play it safe, but we need more people that are willing to take those risks. And even I hate even calling it a risk, because it shouldn't be viewed as a risk to just say, I want to design a board game that is not tied to an existing IP and that is wholly new. Like, that shouldn't be considered a risk. That should be the baseline, what we're all doing. And even though I enjoy, Lord of the Rings, Duel for Middle Earth, I'm not the biggest fan that is Lord of the Rings themed. I'm a kind of the mind that I don't like when existing board games get rethemed into an IP. If it's designed in the first place, like say Dune Imperium as a Dune game, sure. But if you take an existing game and say, now we're going to theme it into James Bond, now we're going to theme it into Pokemon, now we're going to theme it into whatever. Like I'm not the biggest fan of that. If it already existed as its own thing, I'd rather it just stay its own thing, and that IP can try to do something else that is more tied to it. But that's a personal opinion I found.
No, I agree with that. I think that there's a distinction to make even between something like Container, for example, being reprinted, which is like an old game that's been out of print for years and years. Like, I think that's awesome. A game like that coming back, or when we were talking about, again, Zuvadis, because like you're exposing a bunch of people to a game that they would have otherwise missed and that was unavailable, right? So you're actually making something available that wasn't there. Whereas, like you said, just slapping a new theme on a game that already exists, that's more like, it feels like it's coming from a place of how can we make money, more than like what's something that people are out there asking for that we can like fill this need, that's like this demand there. It's more just like, this will sell because this show is popular right now, or whatever.
And it feels like this might be a weird way to word it, but it feels kind of unfair too. Like Seven Wonders Duel is one of the most acclaimed 2-player games. It's not only on BGG chart, but when people talk about like it is a great, fantastic game. And after it releasing multiple expansions, being talked about so much, they just say, well, we're going to update it, we're going to make it better, but we're going to make it a Lord of the Rings game. And it's like, well, but it's not a Lord of the Rings game. It's a Seven Wonders game, and it's already really, really good. Like, it should have been Seven Wonders Duel 2nd Edition, or Seven Wonders Duel new subtitle, whatever. And that decision must have been made because they knew the Lord of the Rings brand would sell better and get more notoriety. And so I don't blame them, but at the same time, it's not a Lord of the Rings game. It's a Seven Wonders game, and we've just changed it to try to get it to sell better. And I don't know. It's unfair. It's unfair to Seven Wonders.
So now let me ask, I don't want to go too much more into this one topic, but now that we're on it, like something like this where they've implemented the Lord of the Rings theme pretty well into there. So even though like obviously it wasn't designed as a Lord of the Rings game from the ground up, they've done a really good job of implementing it. And even if you think of Lord of the Rings The Confrontation, which is basically Stratego with Lord of the Rings themed, is that where there's at least enough like done to lean into the theme where it like kind of justifies the existence a little more in your eyes?
It's definitely justified. Like, I agree with you. It's the theme is really, really well implemented. I just think that like for them to have gotten to that point in that final design, they played tests, they sat around, they had discussions, and all of that could have been done outside of the theme of Lord of the Rings. And it could have been like, okay, we're making a follow-up to Seven Wonders Duel, and it's 2nd edition. And they could have found a way to incorporate that all into the Seven Wonders theme. And I almost think that would have been more interesting to say, we have this tracker we want to use, like the Frodo and I can't remember what it is that's called, that's chasing them.
The Dark Rider, I think.
Yeah, so like that could have been, it would have been interesting to see how they would have done that in the theme of the original Seven Wonders Duel. And it's not that I'm necessarily so tied to that theme. It's just that like there's something that feels like this is a board game that is now being unfairly told like, no, this is now a Lord of the Rings game. But it's like, well, no, it was an original board game IP that you are now turning into a Lord of the Rings property, so it sells more. And there's something I just don't feel good about with that, where we take a board game in a small niche and say now it's part of an IP of a huge company, you know? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel as good to me as if it was just stayed a Seven Wonders Duel.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. My trend, which we're gonna rein this one in for sure, because this could absolutely be an entire episode, that I would like to see stop is crowdfunding used as a marketing tool. This snowball might be way too far down the hill. It's been too many years of this, but in my mind, crowdfunding, Kickstarter, GameFound, all of that, the original inception of all of this was supposed to be to create opportunities for people that otherwise wouldn't have the avenues and the funding and ways to get their ideas made, to essentially pitch to the public. If you pay this now and help me get this made, then you will get this product, you'll get this game, and we don't have to like try to get someone else to see and agree that this is going to be something that sells and get a publisher to pick it up, whatever. And it's just like, we've seen, this isn't brand new, like this is over the last number of years, we've seen that essentially it is the strategy of certain games. And it is a strategy in the sense that they say we are going to crowdfunding and they have a number in mind that we need to hit on crowdfunding for this to be viable. Often they don't even put that as their actual goal. The goal that they have internally is very different. We've seen this with games that say our goal is 100,000 and then they raise 600,000 and they say, oh, that's not enough for us, which to me is one of the most egregious, shady things you could do, is to say we need to hit 100,000 to make this game, and then you hit like 6 times that and say, oh, that's still not enough. Like, then you lied to us what your goal was in the first place. That's an aside. But I just like to see this not be a marketing tool. I think this is probably, I don't want to say exclusive to the board game industry, but I feel like we feel it more than other places, other niches that use Kickstarter and crowdfunding, because board games are already so niche that for many, this is the only way that they can think about getting a game made, is to have these sort of like quote unquote guaranteed sales in advance to know, okay, I'll be able to do this whole first printing. And I understand that, but it just doesn't feel great to me. It's one of the reasons I've stopped, kickstarting games too, that you always sort of don't know, is this going to deliver when it says? Are the prices going to go up? Is this going to be affected by world issues that are going to be in place 2 years from now, like tariffs and stuff? Is this just like, like come on games or whatever, where it's just like every project goes to Kickstarter and they're not actually like a little company looking for help in crowdfunding. It is their marketing like strategy to use crowdfunding. I don't know. We've lost sight of what it was originally intended to be, and I would just love to see it become sort of more what it was intended, where games are getting made because of crowdfunding that otherwise wouldn't have. Not, this is just the place to put your gigantic $300 mini-filled games because you'll be able to pre-make like $12 million off of them because everyone's interested. There's honestly, like, this is one where I'm saying I would like to see it stop. I feel confident saying it is not going to stop, but I think it should be something we're considering and talking about more. Like I think we'd be benefiting a lot more as a whole and as an industry and a hobby if the games that were coming out of there were more grassroots and indie and everything like it was intended to be in the first place.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know me, I haven't done a ton of crowdfunding in general. I think I've maybe backed like definitely less than 10 games on crowdfunding ever, maybe 6 or 7. And for the most part, like how many of them do I still own or expect to own long term? Like,
and how many did you have issues with delivery, with timing, with like condition? Like there's so many, like you said, you only back like 10, and it's like, I can't remember, but like it's more than one of those 10, which is a pretty high percentage already that you've had issues with in some level of, and that mine would be the same, like whether it's delivery, quality, or promises or whatever.
Well, one of mine still hasn't fulfilled, and I imagine just never will, and maybe this isn't the right place to get into that and
yeah.
Name dropping and whatnot. I haven't done a whole lot of like research into see what's even going on, but I noticed someone in one of the threads for it not long ago said it's now like the 4 or 5 year anniversary of this game being on Kickstarter or GameFound, and there's still like designers just like hasn't said anything about it. So yeah, that's like obviously that's one of the most unfortunate parts of crowdfunding, if not the most unfortunate. It's also just hard to see, like, it's one of those problems where we as gamers in the hobby, and I'm not saying necessarily you and me, because again, if we're not like engaging in a ton of crowdfunding these days, but like all of us as gamers contribute to this by continuing to support. Like, I saw something online the other day about someone saying like, I'm trying to talk myself out of backing. You see these kind of threads like all the time. I'm trying to talk myself out of backing, or like, tell me why I shouldn't back so-and-so game. And this person like listed like 8 different things they don't like about it or are skeptical about, and said like, this company doesn't even look reputable, and they're like, the reviews from past games they've done, like it seems like they don't normally make great games, but like for some reason I still am like considering backing this. And they were just replies being like, you don't want it, why are you considering backing this? Like, and like the shipping is however, how like $30, $40, $50 for a game at times, sometimes more. And it just feels like if we keep backing these games and we keep seeing these campaigns that have raised like millions of dollars, companies are just going to keep doing it. Like it's basically like a glorified pre-order system now, where and sometimes you find that people are getting their games in retail sooner than the people who have backed their game through crowdfunding are getting it, which makes it like, is it really even a pre-order system if you're not even getting it in advance of when other people, like, what's the advantage at that point other than you're just helping prop this company up? Obviously there's stretch goals and things like that, but it feels very much like the onus of the risk is now being placed on the consumer rather than on the company. And I get for small independent companies, like if that's the only way you can get your game made, like some random first person trying to design their first game, like I get it. Like you said, it's there for those independent, smaller publishers. But when it's like a big company that's just using it to gauge like how many numbers or like how many games to print in their print runs, and it feels like it's more for their efficiency, like it becomes a bit of a gray area too, though, because at the same time, like I've never like worked for a board game company. Like I've never been working on the publishing side of things. I don't know exactly what the financial climate is like out there between tariffs and everything else. Like it's hard for me to be too critical of how a company is being run without like knowing too much about their numbers. But yeah, it is tough to see either the companies that we know are either very successful and or companies who have outstanding projects starting new projects and then like taking money from new projects to fulfill old ones and getting stuck in these cycles. And there's how many companies that have gone bankrupt or out of business in the past couple of years because of these cycles where they're just using new projects to fulfill old ones. It's just
like there should honestly, I honestly think that the rule should be that you can't post a new project until you fulfill the other one. And I know that creates a system where there'll be loopholes. People will try to do it under a new company or account, whatever. But to me, with the original intent of what these crowdfunding things are in the first place, you shouldn't be working on something else if you haven't even fulfilled the promises from the first one. If you already are, you're probably at a size that is big enough that you don't need to be using crowdfunding, or you're using it incorrectly, like you said, where you're using funds from a previous one for the next one, which to me is not that's not a good practice. Like not only that, it's a really horrible practice.
Yeah, well, it's just delaying the inevitable. It's kind of just like, well, someone eventually down the line is going to pay for this, whether it's the current backers of this game or backers of a future game. Like at some point, this money is going to run out, the company is going to go under, and someone's going to suffer from this.
Yeah, like crowdfunding in our hobby, it is the center of FOMO. Like it is the FOMO hub of our hobby, and I guess my hope is that people can get a little bit more comfortable with just saying, I'm not going to back this. I'm going to wait for it to come to retail, or even like don't back it. And then like there's always late pledge options. There's always pre-order options. There's always, as you get closer to retail, you might all of a sudden realize, oh, it's going to hit retail before, so I don't even have to pay the shipping. It'll be at my local game store. I can just get them to order it in or whatever. Like I even just go to your local game store like we do here and just say, this game's on crowdfunding. What I would be interested in ordering if you're ordering it in as a store. There's almost always retailer pledge options. Like there's better avenues, I guess, and I just would love to see something shift in the crowdfunding scene, because I just really don't like what it's turned into.
Yeah, I think what you said is really, really interesting. Before we move on, I just want to hone in on that. Like, I think if retail stores made it more clear to their customers, or just made it a bigger, like a more intentional point to say, like, we are going to carry games from Kickstarter campaigns, and maybe they have on their website, they have a list of like games like campaigns they've backed, or games there, or maybe when a campaign goes up, they have like a newsletter or something they send out. They gauge interest from like people who shop at their store frequently. Like maybe it's a matter of retail stores having some type of like more community program thing where you get an idea of like, hey, how many people locally are interested in this game? If I got 20 copies from my store, would these sell? And then maybe as like sort of like within your own community, you're helping everyone kind of like, hey, let's all cut back on how many games we're backing individually. We'll just kind of like talk to the people at our local game stores, and maybe that ends up making a bit of a difference in the long run, is like you're buying your games more through your local game store rather than individually through Kickstarter, having all these games shipped to individual people all around, different continents. Like,
And I know that like this is obviously like a big topic, and there's lots of nuance here. We could talk about it forever, but I just feel like at the very least, the one thing I think that I can say with 100% certainty is there's room to improve in the crowdfunding scene, and we've swayed in the direction that I don't completely agree with, and I would just love to see certain things sway back, even if it doesn't completely ever go back to being just sort of this indie grassroots level thing. I just think that we could get away from certain things that it would just benefit the consumer. Like it would just benefit us. Even if it's not the best thing for some of the companies, like I just think that that's the right direction to go.
Yeah, and I'm just going to give a quick shout out to a YouTube channel called Room and Board, run by a guy named Chris George, who's a fellow Canadian. I believe he's in Ontario, and is one of the best channels out there for like helping you resist the hype of crowdfunding. He has tons of videos talking about why not to back specific games or being really critical about what's on crowdfunding. So if you find yourself a victim of FOMO or you're getting enticed by a lot of these games and you're looking for someone to kind of talk you down a little bit, definitely check out Room and Board.
Great shout out. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is what's a game that we currently own that we want to commit to playing more of in 2026. We talk about this a lot off the podcast and just in general, I think about it a lot, so I figure we could formalize something here. And I'll kick things off with a game that I have talked about before, but I'm going to commit to finally getting a group together and also solo playing this game, and that is Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. It has been sitting on my shelf for so long. I've only ever played the first 2 story chapters of it. It's been years and years now since I last did that. It's still like in the top either 50 or top 100 on Board Game Geek, which I don't subscribe to very often for these campaign games after we've seen like Tainted Grail and stuff make it super high on there. But I just like, it is one I feel fairly confident that when I have played the whole thing, it is going to rank highly for me, or that I'm going to have a lot of positive things to say about it. And I just need to commit to be able to do that. And I also have my friend Jake text me all the time being like, hey, when are you, if you do an Oathsworn group, I want to be in it. And so I have people that are interested. I just have to commit to doing it. And then I also want to do a separate campaign solo and then be able to speak to how it plays solo now that I'm getting into solo gaming. So I really have no excuses now. I have everyone interested. I have myself able to play solo. I just have to do it. So that is my game I'm going to try to play this year way more of, and that's Oathsworn.
Nice. Honestly, that's actually one I'm reluctant to get into too many other like legacy games with other groups, especially at this point in my life. But it's a game I've actually thought about potentially buying one day just to play solo.
Yeah, there's a lot that's exciting about it. So yeah, and even if it could even just be that if you ever want to drop in to like do one session, even just to help you make that choice of whether you would want to play it solo, join us for like one session, no commitment beyond that, and just see if you like it.
I mean, if that's something you guys are open to, I wouldn't say no to that.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so for me, I hesitated. There were a few I was really struggling to decide between, but I'm going with Le Havre for this. So this is Uwe Rosenberg game from, I believe it's 2008. And currently it's probably my second favorite, or it has been for a while, my second favorite Uwe Rosenberg game after Agricola. Especially in terms of his like bigger games. I don't know. I mean, it probably is just second favorite in general. But I've only played it twice in the span of, I think, 4 years or so. It's like a couple years between the first and second play, and now it's been another almost 2 years since the last play. So each time I've played it, I've really enjoyed it. I see a lot of the similarities with Agricola. I mean, you and I have talked about it too. I know you've played it one of those times with me. It was the first time we played it. And I was like fascinated with the game when I first played it because it was one of the last bigger box Uwe games I've played after I'd played tons of the other ones. And I remember immediately thinking like, whoa, this is the most I've liked one of these since Agricola. And having that kind of like the economic aspect in the game and just the way that the worker placement works, where you only have the single worker and you can block people at the different buildings. And it's just like, it's really, really interesting and stands out a lot from his other games. And so, but because it's because most people say it's best with 2 players or possibly 3, I really want to get back to playing it a little bit so that we can get to a comfort level, whether it's you and me or other people I game with, where we can revisit it a little more often, because yeah, it looks like there's a lot of depth there. But every time I think about playing it again, I'm a little bit worried about how long it's going to take. The setup is really long, and there's a couple things about there's really not that many rules compared to a lot of his other games, but just because of the loan system and the way things work a little differently with the economic aspect, there's a couple things to iron out sometimes that work just a little bit differently. But yeah, tons to explore there, and I'm really looking forward to playing it more this year. And I know we have to for our Uwe tier list as well, but I could play this, like, if it were up to me, I would play this at least 5 to 10 times this year.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to play it again, because having only played it once and leaving with like a lesser impression than you, I'm curious if that's just because of the first play or if that's just something that's going to stick with me with this game specifically, but also because of how much I love Uwe games. It feels like something that I just will probably grow on the more I play it, but my ceiling just might be a lot lower than yours for like what my overall thoughts will be. But at 2 players, I want to play it. I would want to play it at 3, but I probably it's going to be one of those things where I just play it like once at 3 to see how it is, because it's the length thing for me. You know, if it is a game that I'm not feeling super strong about, the idea of like picking that over other games to sit down and do like a 3-hour game with someone, if someone is also learning it and we have to do a teach and everything, or maybe it's a case of like someone else that you've played it with that already knows the rules. We do a 3-player game with all of us. We know rules, teach needed. We just jump right into it. It's already set up. Maybe that makes it easier, but definitely want to play this one again. Okay, last topic is going to be a bold prediction for the year ahead. No real rules for this one besides just a prediction that we think is bold in some way. Do you want to kick these off?
I was going to say I should go first here because I feel like mine's not going to be as good as yours. I went back and forth.
Don't sell yourself short here.
It's hard to you want to live up to the prediction being bold. And I initially had some things that were maybe too bold and didn't make I couldn't properly justify why that prediction was even realistic or anything. So I went back and forth between too safe and too bold. And what I landed on ultimately is just that I think this is going to be the weakest year for games in a while. And I'm going to specify that it's particularly with like non-reprints and re-implementations. And so this ties in, something I've talked about a couple times, obviously earlier in the episode already. But when I was getting ready for this episode and looking through upcoming games and thinking about where the industry is going and games that came out the past couple of years and all that kind of stuff, I just feel like the kind of like top end of games, like the best games coming out every single year. So far, I've felt maybe a little bit underwhelmed the past couple of years. And I know there's been this we talked about this trend of continuing to go towards like re-implementations and re-themes and stuff. So yeah, like I'm excited about a game like, Gold Country and Grey Loon and, there's plenty of other sort of re-implementations that are coming. Container is a reprint, from an older
or
game.
Like Hanami, that samurai reprint or retheme,
right. I forgot all about that one. Yeah, so it just feels like a lot of what's like, and especially because when I did my 2022 tier list video and when I've done those kind of videos in the past, I usually evaluate the year of just like new releases, and then I kind of just talk about the re-implementations as like an additional bonus thing that's kind of outside of the new releases. And just from what I'm seeing and the direction I see companies going in, I'm just sort of expecting, if not this year, maybe the next year. I just feel like there's the industry is due for, I feel like almost like a noticeable setback before hopefully some sort of a reset. And I don't know, like there isn't a ton of like science or data behind this prediction. It is kind of just like maybe a gut feeling and what I've been seeing, but that's kind of what I expect. And again, a lot of this is going to come down to my personal opinion, right? Like if I might think it's a weak year for games by the end of the year, and other people might say like, well, a bunch of my favorite games were released. So yeah, that's just kind of what I'm expecting.
I think this is a great one, and I think it's definitely bold, because especially us as content creators in the space, there can sometimes be this like pressure for people in the space to sort of always be saying things are good or like things are going to get better or whatever, because you want them to too, like it affects us and whatnot. But this ties in nicely to mine, because I don't disagree with you. I think you might be right, or I wouldn't be surprised if you were. And yet I still think that my bold prediction would apply, and that is that I think that by the end of the year, board games popularity is going to skyrocket, and board games will never be as popular as they were at the end of 2026. And I'll even go as far to say that for the next probably a couple of years, it's just going to continue to grow. And I think that that's going to be one, because as much as we feel the way we do about like re-themes and all this kind of stuff, they work, and that's why people are doing them. And I think that the more we see these Lord of the Rings and these Dunes and everything, like it is bringing more people in. But more than that, I truly believe that there's going to be this continued desire for the owning something physical. I think we're seeing a lot of conversation happen in the world right now with like, you don't really own things. You have a streaming service. Your games are all digital. They shut down this game server. You can't play it online anymore. They upgrade to like the Switch 2, and like, are my Switch games going to work? Are they all compatible? Like, do I have to rebuy them? There's Switch 2 versions of games you already buy. And you have to pay $5 to upgrade it so you get better graphics. Like, but I already own that game. Like, there's all this discussion already happening. And even just like people advertising to you in these, you can like boot up a hockey game and like the boards will have actual advertisements that change based on how they feed you advertisers onto them. And like, you know, you have a Samsung TV and there's ads on your Samsung TV when you open up the smart menu. It's like, but I own this TV. Why am I getting fed ads? You can't, that doesn't happen with board games. Once you own a board game, you own it. You're not being advertised to anymore. You don't have to worry about like, do I own this in 2 years? If you don't sell it, you do, right? And I just feel like there's going to be this continued push for owning things physically, for face-to-face interactions, for authenticity, for genuine interactions. And board games are this like persistent nostalgic thing that have always existed that they haven't really been able to change that. You can't really, people have tried to digitize board games and make these digital versions and all this kind of stuff, and like some of them get popular and people do like them to different degrees, but yeah, we haven't seen them explode, and I think that's for a reason. That's not the main reason people play board games, and I just think that this hobby is going to benefit because of this desire to go in this direction. And so this, what I hope is that what you're saying about like reprints and everything, that does change over time, and that there's less of them and there's more original IPs, original ideas. Because if the popularity does skyrocket, I want it to skyrocket and people to see all these amazing, interesting new designs. Not that everyone comes into the hobby and they're like, oh, there's just a bunch of Lord of the Rings games, there's just a bunch of Dune games. And it's like, but there's like thousands of amazing board games that you're now able to get into because you're into this hobby, and I want you to be able to experience all those, not just like here's the same game reprinted, or here's another Knizia game reprinted. Even though I love Knizia games, but at some point I want new Knizia designs. I don't want just like here's Nyakuza, which is just a Rongo, and now it's with cats and different, right?
Yeah. Well, man, I have to say, like, I love how much more positive and hopeful your prediction is compared to mine. I felt bad, like, bringing in, like, the other ones I was considering were also pretty negative, and I was like, I don't want to be coming in here Debbie Downer, just crapping all over board gaming. But, so yeah, I really like this. This was, like, definitely a hope of mine. I don't know if I would have said that I could have also predicted it, but I love your optimism, and I would love to see that. I mean, I would love to believe that people are going to be pretty resistant to AI and just like leaning more and more into digital things, and I hadn't really considered the aspect you mentioned about like the physical ownership, but you know, a lot of people do see that. I think quickly within, you know, a few months or years of getting into gaming, people start to see how their games like retain value, and you start to understand the secondhand market and that sort of thing. So I would love this for games.
Yeah, like I just think people are tired of subscriptions, and like it's everywhere now. Like it used to just be like there's a couple places it was and it made sense. You subscribe to the one streaming service. There was only one. It was Netflix. You subscribe to Adobe, and even though that sucks, you get something that otherwise would have cost like $2,000, and it's more accessible. But now I don't have Microsoft Word on my computer because it's a subscription. To have Microsoft Word on my computer, I have to subscribe to get Microsoft Word and pay monthly. Microsoft Word hasn't changed in a meaningful way that matters to me in like 20 years. I just want to type words on a page. Why would I pay a subscription cost? Especially when I can just go to my Google account and I can just use Google Docs and just use that the same way. We don't need everything to be a subscription. I don't need to subscribe to heated seats in my car. I don't need to subscribe to the new Windows, have it be like, you know, a subscription model. Like, just let me buy something and I own it, and you don't take it away from me.
Yeah, but it's always like presented as like they're doing this in the interest of the customer. It's like, now you can just like pay monthly this small amount. It's like, yeah, but you know how much money you're making off me in the long term. Like,
yeah. I will just say, I was so mad about the Microsoft Word thing. The fact that Microsoft Word is not just a pack-in with computers in general that you never even have to think about spending a cent on is the craziest thing to me that I've thought about in the last couple of months. Like, outside of the world is crazy, but I just mean like in terms of this type of topic, I cannot believe that someone wants me to pay a subscription cost for Microsoft Word. I
didn't know that was. I didn't know that was a thing. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, like anyway, so that's where this came from. Is I know I personally want to own more of my stuff and not have to worry about being beholden to something being shut down or a server being shut down. And board games, they're just on my shelf and they're not going anywhere unless I sell them, which is great. And that is everything. Is there anything else you can think of before we go that you want to talk about or say to do with 2026?
No, I guess the only thing I'll say is I hope it's a better year than I'm expecting, and I would love, love to be pleasantly surprised. I guess the last thing I'll say is, every year when we used to do these most anticipated games lists at the beginning of the year, we would do our list of 10 games or whatever, and then within like a couple months, 2 months, 4 months, suddenly there's tons of other games that have been announced. So who knows, like by July or September, when people are announcing a lot of games that will be talked about at Essen, I might suddenly be a lot more hopeful and things might change. It's just based on a lot of what I see and what a lot of what gets pushed on the Board Game Geek hotness. It tends to go around the kind of like lazier reprints, reimplementations. And again, I also don't want to lump them in and say they're all lazy. It's just it's like a collective laziness as an industry to, like, as a whole, rely more on the success of previous ideas rather than have belief in a new idea and see that through to the end.
Yeah, it's like, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, it's not lazy in the sense that like the quality of the game, the artwork, the production, the development, it's lazy in the concept. It's like they can make it they're making a new Lord of the Rings movie, something to do with Gollum. I can't remember what it is. And it's like, I'm sure the production and the work and everything that goes into it's not going to be lazy, but the idea of let's just do another Lord of the Rings movie instead of creating a brand new fantasy IP is inherently lazy. And it's not that people don't want Lord of the Rings, that they don't want more of that stuff. It's just that like the amount of work that it would take to go develop a new IP to get people attached to it and everything. People look at that and say, well, why would we do that? We'll just do another Lord of the Rings movie, and that's sort of like the shortcut in my eyes.
Yeah, and I guess like think of what will define this era if all we're doing is reimplementations. Like you look at like the 90s of board games and you have like the Knizia tile laying and auction games and like area control and that kind of stuff, and then like the really cutthroat worker placement stuff in the 2000s. You had like legacy and Kickstarter stuff in like around like 2015-ish, a good like probably decade or so of that. And it's just, I'm kind of wondering like what's this like decade or era of games going to be remembered for if what we're leaning into consistently is redoing ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it. That's a great little quote there to like sort of like almost even pose it to our audience. Like, how do you feel about the outlook of 2026, but also from the perspective of, are you totally on board with some of these reprints, reimplementations, because maybe you didn't see the originals and this is your opportunity and that's enough for you? Or are you just sort of hungry for new ideas, new games, and sort of like the next wingspan, not a new wingspan, if that makes sense. And with that, we are going to end this off. So I'm feeling pretty full. I don't know about you, Carlo. So last thing we'll mention here is, if you obviously aren't aware, we have a YouTube channel. That's how this all started. We are posting videos there very frequently. You can find it at youtube.com/allyoucanboard. And if you'd like to chat with either myself, Carlo, Braden, or anybody in our lovely community about this episode, about anything board game related or not board game related, we have a Discord. The link is in the show notes, as well as you can find it on our YouTube channel. Join us there. If you want to support this show, our channel, everything we're doing, we have a Patreon that you can support us financially through there. It goes a long way to helping this continue to be sustainable for us and to continue to do this. But even if you can't support us financially, just liking, subscribing, leaving reviews on the podcast, on episodes, spreading the word, telling your friends, all goes a very long way. And then just a reminder that we do have one of our newest tiers on Patreon. We'll give you a chance to get some free games. We're getting pretty close to when we're going to be ready to send out the first batch of games that we've been sent from publishers for like content review purposes and stuff that we aren't selling, because we don't sell games that we've been sent by publishers for free. We pass those back on to the community. So that's coming up soon, so you'll be able to get in before that happens. And otherwise, this has been episode 4 of the All You Can Board podcast, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time for episode 5.
See ya.